All right, I'll just share the screen and then we'll go ahead and start.
Sure.
Okay. Oopsie. All right. All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. We've done a couple of these live streams here in the Taiwan market, and we love them. It's a great crowd. We got a lot of wonderful questions, and we're just thankful and happy to be doing this. So my name is James Early, and I'm joined by my longtime analyst, Xiaoping Wang.
Hello， 大家好，欢迎来到美新手专属的美股投资 Q&A 过去的几周呢，我们进行了好几次的webinar 我们非常感谢大家能提出这些问题，然后我们也非常开心可以认识大家。那今天呢，我们就是一个新手专属的基本上等于美股投资的101。好。
Excellent. So very quickly, I think a lot of you guys might know about me already. We'll be quick, but I am Chief Investment Officer for BBAE, and I have worked in a few different capacities in the hedge fund space, in different published research capacities for my 25 years in investing.
James Early 是BBAE 就是必备证券的首席投资长，曾经也担任过 MarketWise 中国的中国区执行长，也是 Motley Fool 前研究分析总监。
And Xiaoping, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
我是 BBAE 的分析师黄少萍，曾经也担任过 MarketWise 中国的分析师，也接受过 CGTN 财经、福布斯中国等主流财经媒体的采访。我毕业于Brandeis University 的商业分析。
And just as a random point, Xiaoping, we're going to both be again at the Berkshire Hathaway event in Omaha, so we'll probably do some kind of live stream or broadcast from there. So be ready for that.
我和 James 将在5月份的时候去马哈参加1年1度的伯克希尔年度投资者大会，所以到时候我们可能会有几场直播欢迎大家收看。
Awesome. Okay, so very briefly, why invest in the U.S.? Now, most of you probably are already sold on this, so we don't need this slide. But in general, the U.S. is a stable market, and that attracts money, and that attracts good companies, good projects. And as you can see here at the bottom, it's had a 10% annual return roughly for the duration of the U.S. market. And that compounds to quite a lot of money over time. If you have a baby and give $500 US dollars in the account, it'll be almost $500,000 by the time that kid is 70 years old and retiring.
那首先为什么我们要投资美股？其实长远来看呢，美股就是全球最好的一个资本市场。它拥有非常悠久的历史，还有成熟完善的监管监管对于一个股市来说是非常重要的，因为如果一个监管不是很完善的话，那么你将没有办法去预测一个股市未来的发展。然后它每年大概会有10%的年报酬率。如果你给一个小宝宝在他刚出生的时候投资$500的话，在他70岁的时候，它可以上涨到近50万美元。
All right, so an example I like to give is this guy, Ted Johnson. He worked for UPS, which is a package company. He only made $14,000 a year, maximum salary, which at that time was reasonable. But when he retired, he retired in 1952, but by 1981, he had $70 million, which would be $160 million in today's money. This is an exaggerated example. Okay, most people can't get these results. He was probably a real xiaoqigui. But it shows the power of U.S. markets.
所以关于美股投资一个最佳的范例是 Ted Johnson， 他曾经就是一个普通的UPS 职员 ，UPS 就是美国的一个快递公司，他最高的薪资也就是每年$14,000。大概是20世纪50年代的中产阶级，他在1991年的净资产达到了$7000万。如果说以今天的货币计算，它会大概值1.6亿美元左右。当然，这个例子是有一点夸张，但它是真实的。他可能就是一个小气鬼，他不怎么花钱，但是这却是一个非常好的美股投资的例子。
Excellent. All right. So what do you need to do to invest in the U.S.? And by the way, we're going to move kind of quickly through these slides. We got a lot of great questions, and I want to mostly answer your questions. So just FYI.
就是我们会这个 webinar 我们可能会快一点，因为我们收到很多非常多有意思的问题，我们想把大部分的时间放在回答问题上面。
All right, so logistically, obviously, you need to wire money, okay, to a bank, and you need a W-8BEN form that essentially tells the U.S. government or the U.S. IRS that you're not a U.S. citizen, you're not a resident, you live elsewhere. That way, you won't have as much tax withheld.
首先呢，你如果想要投资美股的话，你需要去证券公司开户，然后去电汇美元到你的证券账户。最重要的是有一个叫 W-8BEN 的表格，就是向美国的国税局表明你是外国人，你不需要去缴纳美国的税款。不过一个好消息就是你们不需要去担心这个问题 ，BBAE 自动帮我们的用户去提交并且定期更新这个表格。
Exactly. Yeah. So we're doing this on behalf of BBAE. So we want to tell you that we do that automatically. So if you've not downloaded the app, you've not opened an account, please feel free to do that. And we'll have a link at the end of this slideshow where you can download the app.
那如果说还没有开户或者没有下载这个 app 的朋友们，欢迎大家去下载啊。
Excellent. All right. So taxes, capital gains are not a problem as long as you fill out the W-8BEN. The exciting part is with dividends. Dividends have traditionally had a 30% withholding tax. The U.S. broker withholds that. That there's legislation now in the U.S. that I think personally is very, very likely to pass. It's in the House and in the Senate. You can see those two bills. Very likely to pass, which is going to reduce it to 15%. So that gets it's more attractive for Taiwanese investors.
首先呢，就是关于投资美股的税法，就是它是没有台湾的朋友们是没有这个资本利得税的，然后股利税也是本来是预扣30%，但是就是降低到15%的这个法案很有可能会通过，就是这样。
And the reason is not actually for individual investors. It's because the U.S. wants to encourage Taiwan Semiconductor Company to own more subsidiaries in the U.S. And therefore those dividends would be taxed less, but everyone still benefits.
其实这个主要就是为了让台湾的半导体产业就是鼓励他们去在美国有一个比较好的发展，所以就是这基本上就是减轻他们的税务压力。
All right, so kind of obvious, two things you do. You decide your allocation, and then you decide what stocks to buy.
选股的关键步骤，首先第一个就是决定你的资产配置，第二个就是决定你想要去买什么美股，或者你想要买什么 ETF。
All right, so how do you find these stocks? We're not going to talk too much about the allocation here. Okay, that's kind of not our area. Okay, it's your decision. But for the finding the stocks, there are basically two ways. What we call the idiosyncratic way, meaning you just find things different ways, like stuff comes to you through friends, through research services, through articles, Wenchang, Shapin, whatever, and then you apply your framework to that. The other way is you have your own framework already and do what's called screening. So sort of like a push or pull.
我们这次不太会聊到资产配置，因为这是您个人的选择但是关于选股方面，我们大概有2个方法。第一个就是你先随机的去接受这些信息，比如说新闻报道、亲朋好友，还有研究机构你去知道的这些公司，然后你再去研究这些公司的基本面。那第二个就是用基本面去筛选，在所有的股票里面，你用一些标准去把你想要的股票去挑出来有很多免费的工具。
Excellent. This is the most important slide here. Most important part is the factors. Factors are your reasons for buying or selling stocks. And so your success or failure as an investor will come down to this. And I would say that everybody uses factors, but most people don't use them with a broad framework. They don't realize they're using them. They just feel emotions and they just buy stocks or sell stocks, but But the more precise you have your factors in your mind, the better you'll do. So anyway, long story short, you can see here, factors can be more quantitative, more qualitative, in the middle, or kind of big picture.
基本面因素就是，其实因素就是选股最重要的部分，就基本上决定了你投资的成功或者失败。那么大部分人都是有一些自己的这个标准在的，但是很多人都是没有形成一个比较系统性的投资逻辑。那么其实这最好来说呢，就是大家可以去形成一个有系统的投资逻辑，去挑选自己喜欢的股票。那么有这么几个因素吧，首先量化、质量，还有混合，还有宏观经济与大局，大家可以看一下这个 PPT。
Cool. Okay, so for me, I can just tell you what I do. I basically look for companies that are going to grow their earnings sustainably over a long period of time. If you have a company that does that, it's very hard for that company's stock price to not go up.
James 会比较偏好的办法就是去其实这也是最基础、最简单的一个办法，就是你去看一家公司的获利情况。如果一家长期成长、长期获利的公司，它的股价其实很难不会上涨。
Okay, so we'll go to the questions now. Of course, we'd love to have you download the BBAE app if you have not downloaded already. We got some links here, and you get some reports if you do that or if you fund your account.
接下来我们就大家可以提问题啦，然后欢迎大家去下载 BBAE 的 APP 欢迎大家入金我们会有一些VIP 专属的 webinar， 还有James 特地为大家写的几份报告。
All right, so let's do some questions here. I'm just opening them up on my phone, so we got those questions in advance, and thank you guys very much for submitting them. The first one here comes from Kenny asking if Apple, Tesla, and Google are still good to buy with a long call option strategy. All right, so and let me just say overall, we can't give investment advice, so I can't tell you what to do or what not to do. I would say these companies would have been very good to buy as a long call strategy previously. I'm not saying they're bad to buy now, okay? But they're very rich. Tesla has been whacked, okay? So if you follow Tesla closely and you believe it's coming back, then I might look at that one a little more aggressively. But the other two, I mean, Apple and Google, in 10 years, will they be worth more? I think so. I don't know how long your call is, but in 1 year or 18 months, I don't know. Okay, that's my answer to that.
首先我们来回答几个观众提前问的问题。首先是来自 Kenny 说 Apple、Tesla 还有 Google 现在还适合买入长期看涨期权吗？那首先声明一下，我们是无法给出，由于监管原因，无法给出这个投资建议。但是理论上来说呢，这些公司几年前，如果你去买入这个长期看涨期权，会是一个非常不错的选择。但是现在来说呢，他们都价格都会比较高，也就是说比较贵吧。所以就是James 个人来说，他是不是很愿意去买入他们的长期看涨期权？但他可能就是也不一定是对的。然后对于 Tesla 呢，对于 Tesla 来说，因为它现在可能就有点下跌，所以如果说你想要做一个比较就是有勇气的这么一个选择的话，你就可以就是适当的去做一些这样子的操作。
All right, so I just got a message from one of our team that I might have been incorrectly talking about options when this was just a question about buying them generally. So I own Apple. I own Google. I do not own Tesla. So if you're a long-term holder and it's not an option strategy, Kenny, I'm more optimistic.
刚刚就是我们的这个同事给我们发过来，就是这个 Kenny 问的其实是股票。那 James 是拥有这些股票的，所以如果你只是拥有股票，不是期权的话，是可以长期持有。
So thanks for the question, Kenny. Appreciate that. Okay, next question. This comes from Celine. Is it common for every American to invest in U.S. stocks? I found, Celine, that 61% of U.S. adults own stock. So fairly common. And between 1/5 to 1/3 of the market cap of U.S. stocks is owned directly by retail investors, which is not that high. It's not like China. PRC, it's mostly retail driven. In the U.S., it's mostly institutional driven. If you want to count pension funds and mutual funds as being retail, that's indirect, then it's a little bit higher. But directly, it's 20-30%.
第二个问题是来自 Celine 的问，就每个美国人都会投资股票吗？那这个答案就是大概有61%的美国成年人是拥有股票的然后大约有20%到30%的这个市值是来自于这个零售投资者所持有的股票。如果你去想要把这个共同基金还有养老基金去间接计算进来的话，那这个数字会更高，大概有3%。
All right. So next question. I'm looking to expand my knowledge on options trading. Any recommended courses? Okay. So BOS, Buffett Online School, is our great partner in Taiwan. They've been very helpful. I believe they have some classes or some programs. So I would check them out first. After I'm done with this Jerbo, I can post 2 links in the chat where to 2 articles that I wrote for BBAE, or maybe I can send them to someone now in real time, and we can do that. They'll be in English, okay, but you can translate them. And I'm arrogant, I'm biased, but I also love my own explanation. So this is one idea. The main thing I'm going to say with options, okay, is make sure you understand the stock first, okay? Most people do this wrong. Most people learn about options. They want to apply the trade somehow. You need to have an opinion on the stock first, okay? Then you find out what the options trade is to exploit that opinion. And it's very hard to have an opinion on short-term stock price movements and be right, okay? So just be careful.
第三个问题是有位观众想要扩充他对于期权交易的知识问有没有推荐的课程。那首先呢 BOS 就是台湾的一个投资教育的一个平台，它可能会有比较多的课程。然后James 也在美国的 BBAE 的 blog 上写过一些期权文章但是英文的，但你们可以自己翻译一下。然后但是 James 的建议呢，我们的建议首先呢就是在你操作期权之前，首先你要保证你自己了解这是一只什么样的股票，这是一个什么样的公司，然后你再去学习期权去怎么去操作。对。
All right. Okay, so next question here. At what age do you think it's appropriate to introduce children to stocks, and how would you do it? Good question. I have a 15-year-old son, and I have the same question myself. For me, it was about 10 to 12 years old with him. When I bought some stocks that he could connect to, that own video game companies. So he feels some kind of a connection. That's the first part of my answer.
第4个问题就是你认为就是引导孩子去了解股票的年龄是大概几岁？你会怎么去教育他们？那首先James 的回答是他自己有一个15岁的儿子，所以他的建议是大概在10到12岁的时候，他可以去给孩子买一只跟他比较有关联的股票，比如说他的孩子就是比较喜欢玩游戏，那么他就给他买了一只就是电子游戏的这个股票，这样子他们会更了解也知道自己在干什么吧。
And the next part is, I'm going to connect it to your next question, which is how can one cultivate patience when navigating the stock market? This is a really, really, really good question. It's one of the best questions I've gotten, okay? Because it shows that you are looking, I would say, in the right way at stocks. It's very hard as an investor to have almost impossible to be smarter than the hedge funds, to have better information than the hedge funds and mutual funds, to have better analysis than those guys. The advantage of the average investor is patience. We don't have to worry about being measured by 1 year at a time. And it's hard, right? It's hard because, especially for a kid, because when you're long-term investing, like you can barely even measure your success after 3 years, 3 to 5 years or more, right? So you don't have immediate feedback. If you're day trading, you do. But if you're investing for a long time, you don't even know if you're good for 3 to 5 years. That's really, really hard, right? But it's hard for everybody. And that's the good part. So if you can be more patient than the other people and teach your kid the same thing, that it's basically don't check your stocks too much, okay? You check in every now and then. And that's why you're going to win, because you can be more patient than other people. Okay, you're taking advantage of their mental weakness. That sounds terrible, right? It sounds terrible, but you're taking advantage of their mental weakness by being more patient than them. That's almost the only way regular investors can succeed in investing. So that is an extremely important question.
接下来这个问题，就是非常非常的好，应该是我们目前收到过最好的问题，就是如何在股市中培养耐心。其实能问出这个问题，就说明你是理解投资的本质的，因为你作为一个个人投资人，几乎不可能去拥有比大型对冲基金或者共同基金更多的信息，或者比他们技术更高的分析。所以你的主要优势呢，其实就是利用其他投资者的认知弱点，去得到这个获利。如果你把你的耐心看作是别人不耐烦，你可能会让你成功的概率更大。然后所以投资最重要的就是保持耐心，因为在这个过程中呢，你会有很多其他的噪音，所以最好的办法就是在你认真挑选出一只你非常看好的股票之后，你不要去频繁的去看它的股价，因为这些都将是噪音。对，所以就是保持耐心，因为作为一个长期投资者，你在3到5年内有可能才会看到结果，就跟这个day trader 是不一样的。
Thank you, Xiaoping. I think there was a lot to translate, but thank you very much. It was a very important question. All right, so now we have one from Kyler. Well, actually, a bunch from Kyler. Kyler, thank you. We appreciate all these questions. I'm going to bundle 3 questions together, Kyler. It says, I'd like to ask if you have any preferred options trading strategies. I'm eager to learn more about options and would like to hear insights. And I'm currently lacking a list of long call positions or suitable candidates for long call positions. Can you give some ideas? Okay, so he's basically asking a bunch about options. I think we should do an options jabol. That's my first answer. And we can get deeper into this topic. Let me say this. So maybe Xiaoping, I'll let you translate that, and then I'll go a little bit deeper in the answer.
所以下一个问题是来自 Kyler 的，他问了3个问题，非常感谢。所以我们会把这3个问题整合在一起回答。是我想问，就是有没有常用的期权交易策略，还有就是Kyler 想要了解更多关于期权策略的信息也希望我们能给出一些建议。然后第3个问题是他目前是缺少一些适合长期看涨期权的这个股票清单希望我们能给出一些建议。
Okay, so again, like I said earlier, the most important thing with options is not the options. It's your view on the stock. I generally don't do complicated options trades because it's very hard to have an accurate short-term view on a stock performance. I'll say a couple things. Sometimes I did. My old hedge fund, I have successfully put on some short-term options trade when I was very, very, very confident about the stock's movement. Okay, but that's rare. So when you're very confident, you can bet. And the reward is high. If the stock goes up 10%, you could make 500% or 600% on an options trade if you buy a call. But if the stock goes down even 2%, you lose everything on the options. Whereas in the stock, you're just down 2%. So I'll let you translate that, Xiaoping, and then I'll give a little more.
我刚忘记说了，我们之后可能会做一个专注于期权的直播，所以大家可以关注一下。然后关于期权这个问题呢，首先我们要声明一下，由于监管原因，我们是不可以给出具体的期权交易的建议的。然后 James 的回答是，他通常是不做非常复杂的期权交易的操作，因为我们都不是很相信能够非常准确的去预测大多数就是期权的生命期权内的这个股价走势，所以在你做期权操作之前呢，最重要的就是你要先去了解你这只股票。所以James 以前在他的对冲基金里面，他有成功的在股价上涨之前买入过看涨期权，但是呢，这个操作一定是给自己非常非常非常有信心的股票。
So for most people getting into options, I would recommend selling them or writing them instead of buying them, because it's kind of like a casino. The casino has slightly better odds than the gambler. And when you're selling the options, you get those slightly better odds. So I'm talking about covered calls, married puts, straddles, strangles. I don't know the Zhongwens of these, might be hard to translate, but basically these are our income options trades. And then you can also do something like a call debit spread, where you do buy a call and you do sell a call. You sell a call, you get a little bit more money for the call that you sell than for the call that you buy, right? So you're technically buying and selling at the same time. I would try that next. So I'd try the pure income strategies first, then maybe a call debit spread. That's a strategy you do on a slightly bullish stock that you're bullish on as the next thing. But generally speaking, you want to use options for income more than you want to use them for speculation. That's my personal view.
对于大多数刚接触期权的人来说呢，如果非要给出什么意见的话，我们会比较建议就是卖出期权，就是因为如果你把这个当做一个赌场的话，当你卖出期权的时候，你更像是庄家，并且就是可以拥有一些稍微轻微的一些优势。所以你可以从这个写入就是卖出看涨期权开始，也可以卖出看跌期权来获得收入的。有一些策略就是比如说覆盖式看涨期权、保护性看跌期权，但这些我们可能会在之后的直播里面去提到，然后现在就大概讲一下。然后呢，但是总的来说，大多数时候希望大家更多的把期权作为你的这个收入来源，而不是一个投机的行为，因为这样会比较危险。
All right, cool. So we're getting more questions, and so I'll have to be a little bit faster on these guys. I apologize, but so what lessons have you learned? Let me consolidate that. The newest thing would be economics in investing. It's a social science that's disguised as a mathematical science. That's the most important lesson.
下一个问题是我们从James 从股市中学到了什么经验？那就是总的来说呢，一句话吧，经济学是一门伪装成数学科学的社会科学，所以大家可以悟一下这句话。
Okay, have you made mistakes in the stock market, and will you be willing to share? Yes, I've made mistakes. I got 3 quickly. Number 1. I actually long ago, thank God, but I told my dad years ago to buy an ice cream company. I like the numbers, but I did not do enough research on the news. And so he bought the stock and it just was flat. And so he said, what's going on? And it turns out the company was being acquired. And so when a company gets acquired, they announce it. They say in 4 months, we're going to buy this company. It just stays kind of flat. So I learned to have a checklist to check everything after that.
下一个问题是，James 有没有在股市中犯过重大错误？想要和他分享一些经验呢？当然有了。有一个第一个早期他曾经建议他爸爸去购买一个冰淇淋公司的股票，因为他那些数字是非常健康的，还有他管理层也是没有问题的。但是他忘了一件非常重要的事情，就是去看这家公司最近的新闻所以事实是呢，那家公司正在被收购，所以它的股票基本上是保持平稳的。比较幸运的是，这只股票是没有亏损，但从这之后，他学会了做一个 checklist，就是一个 fact check。
So second one, I recommended a company called Tuesday Morning that sells like kind of closeout random stuff. They were borrowing money to pay their dividend. That was bad.
第二个错误就是也是比较早期的时候，他推荐了一个叫 Tuesday Morning 的这个股息公司。不过这是一个非常糟糕的公司，因为他需要去借钱去支付他的股息。
Third is I recommended a company called Capital Source that had a very high dividend, and that stock went down. And that part is okay because sometimes stocks go down. But I think I advertised it too heavily to my followers. And so some people bought too much of it. And in fact, I got death threats from a dentist who had lost $500,000 and they kept emailing me over and over, threatening to kill me. So after that, I made a report with 3 stocks that you should buy before you buy anything else, 3 very safe stocks. So that taught me about diversification.
第三个错误可能就比较严重了，就是他之前推荐过一家后来大幅下跌的一个高股息的公司这其实不是问题哈，因为一些股票会下跌，但是这个 James 就可能过度的去宣传这只股票了，然后就是对这只股票可能过于自信了，所以在股票下跌的时候就是遭到了一些人的这个反对吧。他还收过一位牙医的死亡威胁邮件，所以从那之后呢，他也改变了他的咨询服务。所以他现在的建议是希望大家呢可以在购买任何股票之前，先购买3只最安全的股票。
But luckily, I was blessed to beat the market over all 10 years that I publicly advised people.
不过比较好的是呢，就是10年间James 的投资回报都是超过这个市场。
Okay, so quickly, another question about factors. I think I covered those in my slide, but out of curiosity, can you describe your thought process in your context when contemplating various matters? That's kind of a broad question, but it's interesting. That's why I want to answer it. I feel like 2 things. One, I try to minimize regrets. I think, life is getting shorter and shorter. I'm 47 years old, right? So what will I regret the least in the future? How do I decide that way? The other thing is, the older I get to realize, the more I realize we have less control over life than we think. And so it's harder to guarantee an outcome. We can only guarantee our process. We can only guarantee our response to that. So a response to an event. So I try to think more in terms of like, what are the factors I control, and did I do a good job on those?
下一个问题就比较有意思哈，就是抛开股票的话，只是出于个人好奇 ，James 就是希望 James 说一下他在思考各种事情的时候这个思考过程还有背景。那么第一个其实就是减少让自己有可能后悔的机会吧，然后就是可能在做任何事情之前，就是想好了我们就做，就是就算失败了我们也不要后悔。然后再下一个呢，就是就随着年龄的增长，我们也可以去了解到其实我们对于人生是完全没办法完全掌控的，所以最重要的事情就是享受过程。
All right. So thank you, Kyler. Thank you for those. Your questions are always great. Appreciate that. Okay. So from Gina, now a long call. This time is a real long call on Google. It's my first time doing this. I'm uncertain if it's inappropriate. The timing is right. Yeah. Again, I can't advise on stocks, but Google might be a little expensive right now in my view. A long call would have been great a year or 2 ago. now I don't know. I like Google for 5-10 years. Okay. For the next 1 year, I don't know.
下一个问题来自 Gina 她最近决定对 Google 进行就是1年的长期看涨期权，不过这是她第一次做这个操作，所以她也不确定这个时机是不是合适。我们的回答呢，就是虽然我们不能就是就个别股票去提供一些投资建议，但是目前来说 Google 的股价还是偏贵我们对于 Google 这个公司，可能5到10年内我们会比较看好，但是1年真的不好说，因为它现在的股价是偏贵的。
Okay, so another one. Do you have any stocks that you're especially fond of? So again, we can't give recommendations. I will say one thing: I'm avoiding banks, and Xiaoping knows this as well. Banks lent, especially regional banks, lent a lot of money for real estate developers to build office buildings and apartment buildings, and those don't trade very often. And so we didn't know what the valuations were really, but they're starting to trade now, and the valuations are pretty low. Okay, so that's bad. The other thing is, office leases are typically long-term, 5 years, 10 years more. And so they don't renew very often. But finally, some are starting to renew after COVID. And a lot of the companies are saying, we don't need an office, or we don't need, nearly as much office space. So that's bad for the owners of office buildings, which means it's bad for banks because they usually lend money to them.
下一个问题是想问 James 和我有没有特别喜欢的股票能不能分享一下我们的经验和想法？然后我们再次声明一下，我们虽然不能给出推荐，不过呢，对于这个行业的话，我们还是可以稍微说一下，就是银行股的话，现在建议还是不要去碰，因为目前来说很多都正在面临商业地产的风险，因为以前来说呢，这个商业地产的交易是非常不频繁的，所以就是这个价格它的估值都是不透明的。但现在呢，现在来说大家都开始纷纷卖出了，因为这个这些集中公司他们都决定不要这么多空间了，所以他们就没有办法去这个去向银行偿还这些贷款，所以就是银行业现在关于这个商业地产的风险非常非常的大，就是这样。
And Xiaoping, 谢谢你的帮助. I know this is a lot of stuff to translate, so you are like the unsung hero doing all this hard work. I appreciate that. Thank you. So another question, another answer to that is I'm getting more interested in biotech. Biotech's got killed the past couple of years. They needed to, because there were way too many biotechs. Okay, and they've come back now a little bit more than I wanted, but I still think there's opportunity there.
目前来说，我们可能更看好的是生物技术的领域的这个机会。我们在前几场直播里面应该有提到过，就是因为在过去几年内，他们其实确实股价是被大幅的降低了，不过它目前来说就是有点可能过早的反弹了，这个让情况变得有点复杂。但是目前来说呢，可能还是有一些生物科技领域还是有一些机会的。
And I'm still watching hims and hers. I mentioned this in December when I spoke in Taipei. It was about $8 then. It's $16 now, so it's more expensive, but I think it could go higher.
目前James个人关注的股票还有 hims and hers 他在去年12月份在台北演讲的时候有提到过，那时候的股价大概是股价是$8现在大概是$16但是虽然涨了很多，但可能还是有一些机会在的。
They make like different kind of supplements or treatments, not like pure medical, but for things like, erection dysfunction, things that people might be a little bit embarrassed to go to the doctor about, but they prefer to do it mail order.
他们做的产品就是可能是一些就是大家不太好意思去医院检查，但是更倾向于用去网上订购，然后送到自己家里来的这么一些产品。
All right, so next question. Nina Young, Charlie Munger has mentioned that as long as you find good stocks, 3 stocks is enough, says Charlie Munger. And if it's a truly outstanding opportunity, 1 is enough, but you've got to be willing to go all in. Basically, what do I think about this? And how do you know? Great question. I think the better you are as an investor, as in if the more skilled you are, the more you can follow Charlie's advice. I think the less skilled you are, the more you should diversify and not follow Charlie's advice. By the way, this is a more extreme version of Warren Buffett's advice. Warren Buffett says, pretend you have a card and you can only put 20 investments on the card your whole life. You should invest like that. So Charlie Munger is kind of like a more extreme version of that, just 3 or 4. And Daily Journal held only 4 stocks. So he did what he said he would do. But I would say the better you are, the more you can do that. The less better you are, the less you should do that.
下一个问题是查理芒格曾经提到过，只要你可以找到一只非常好的股票，那么3只就足够了，买得多只会适得其反。但如果是一个真正非常好的机会呢，1只就足够了，就是你必须对它非常有信心，然后问我们就是对这个说法有什么看法。首先呢，我们认为作为一个投资者，如果你的技能越高，你就越应该去遵循Charlie Munger 的方式，技能越低就应该更多的去分散你的投资，也就是分散掉你的风险。这其实是巴菲特对关于投资的想法更极端的一个版本吧。他的想法，巴菲特的想法是你的一生中只能做20次投资，然后Daily Journal 就是芒格自己的小伯克希尔，他只持有了4只股票。
And not to give a circular answer, but if you're not sure if an investment is like that once in a lifetime investment, then it's probably not.
还有一句就是，如果你不确定一个投资是不是你这个人生中遇到过最好的机会，那它可能就不是。
Okay, so I got another question. I'm reading the 中文不好意思，我的中文不好。It's basically looking like it's about the Fed and interest rates, cutting rates. I'm going to, ping me if I'm not getting this right later on, because I want to make sure I got your question right. But my short answer to what I think this is asking is, I do think the Fed will cut rates. I do. But I think people are too focused on the actual cutting rates. They're focused on the what. And what matters is the why. Why is the Fed cutting rates? If the Fed is cutting rates because inflation is getting too high again, like they just can't control it, I guess they wouldn't do that. If inflation is getting better, I think that's probably the worst reason. If they're cutting rates because unemployment is creeping up gradually, which is what the Fed wants, because the high employment rate is what's creating the inflation at a root cause. At least that's one of the reasons, right? I mean, lots of money in the economy, but also the inflation will come down like sustainably once unemployment goes up. Okay. So if they're the short version of my answer, and sorry, Xiaoping, this is complicated, but watch inflation. Okay. If inflation is, watch unemployment. Watch unemployment. Okay. Because that's the number I think the Fed is most focused on. And if that gradually goes up, unemployment rate, I think that's the best reason for the Fed to be cutting interest rates. And I think the market will react the most positively in that case.
下一个问题就是一个中文的问题，但 James 努力去读了这个问题哈。问我们说这个股市是不是过热，然后Fed 是不是会降息？我们认为这个股市的反应是不是已经完成了？那short answer， 我们认为美联储会降息，但是目前来说，我觉得人们太关注于这个数字，也就是关注于这是什么，而不是为什么要去降息。美联储降息的原因实际上会比 它降息的这个行动更重要。如果他们是因为通货膨胀再次失控而去降息，那这其实是一个很糟糕的情况，那市场的反应应该是不会太好。然后美联储真正需要去关注的数字其实是失业率。如果美联储因为失业率逐渐上升这是他们想要的，而去降息，那就是最好的情况。那在这样的情况下，股票对此的反应就是最好的。
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, another one. When considering long call options strategy, what conditions would you pay attention to? Can you demonstrate online? Okay, so again, I think let's have a triple. Let's have an options triple. I think we should do that. But look, for a long, you guys really like long calls. It's interesting. For a long call, I would only do a long call if I own the stock first. Okay, you find the stock, you like it so much that you buy it, and then you have like so much love for this stock that you want to do more. Right? That's when you do the long call. Okay, like let that love build up, let that confidence build up, because a long call is leveraged. So you really you want to do that only if you're really, really, really confident. And so, like, I think you should have been confident enough to buy the stock first before you put a long call. That's my view. I'm conservative.
下一个问题就是在操作长期看涨期权的时候我们会去关注哪些具体条件？就是我们很快就会可能去做一个这个关于期权的一个 webinar， 因为太多观众有这个问题了，很奇怪为什么大家都在问这个长期看涨期权。那么对于这个长期看涨期权呢，我们是不太会从这个期权的角度先开始，当然是从股票开始。我们之前也提到过了，你必须足够喜欢这只股票以至于你会去买这只股票，之后你才会去考虑这个你去操作这个股票的期权。所以说你要有足够的自信和喜爱去支撑你的操作，所以在操作期权之前，最好就是你先去买这只股票。
Yeah, and I don't mean to discourage anyone from options, okay? But what I see with options is kind of like a Charlie Munger quote: "To a man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail." And so I've seen some people learn about option strategies, and they go around looking for that nail to apply it to. I think you should do it the other way. Okay, start with the stock, have a belief in the stock, then you think about options.
对于这个不是说我们不鼓励大家去做这个长期看涨期权或者任何期权交易哈，就是我们用芒格的一句话来，就比如说你打地鼠吧，就很多人去操作这个期权的时候，其实是这个地鼠哪里跳出来我们就去打哪里，但是我们应该把这个问题反过来看所以就是在操作期权之前，我们最好我们还是去拥有这只股票先，我们是要喜欢，我们要有自信我们要非常了解这是个什么样的股票，再去做这些操作会比较安全一点。
Okay, great. So a question from the chat: is dividend investing a safe style for beginners? Curious about James's 5 secrets of dividend investing report. Any spoilers? Well, we almost don't need spoilers because it's so easy to get this report. You can just scan the QR code, and once you register, basically you get it. It is a safe. I mean, statistically, it is a safe style. Okay, I mean, you can have individual stocks that are risky, like Capital Source, like Tuesday Morning, but statistically, dividend investing is a safer style for beginners, for anyone really. So I would say that, and I would say the 5 secrets report. It's really just some lessons that I learned. Some of them I learned the hard way about avoiding the bad companies. They're traps. Okay, like look, one is don't buy a company that's borrowing money to pay its dividend. I'll give you that spoiler.
下一个问题是来自于我们的聊天框有一个观众问到了 就是 James 能不能就是说一些关于这个股息投资的建议想要我们去稍微去透露一点这个报告里的秘密。其实拿这个报告很简单，大家只要就是扫二维码就可以拿到这个报告了。然后这个报告里更多的是关于 James 还有这个关于 James 过去呢所犯过错误，他学到的一些教训如果说要一句话去概括这个东西的话，我们就是建议不要去购买需要贷款来支付股息的股票。
All right. Another question is, yes. Oh, by the way, if you fund your account, I should be more clear. If you fund your account, then you get those reports. So just maybe we want to mention that, Shopping. If you open the account and fund it, you can get those reports.
如果你现在已经现在去开户然后打开你的账户，你就可以看到这些报告。
Okay, so another question is, what do you think of the future trend of the energy industry? Okay, so it's kind of a broad question. So a couple of pieces to that. I mean, I think when Russia invaded Ukraine, that taught the world that we were not quite ready for alternative energy as much as we thought. Okay, that's piece number one. I'll let you translate that, Xiaoping, then I'll go a little bit deeper.
下一个问题是我们能不能说一下这个关于能源行业未来的趋势？那么首先呢，就是俄罗斯和乌克兰的这个战争，其实一定程度上说明了我们这个世界其实没有特别准备好开始普及开始用这个新能源。
All right. Okay, so the other piece, so alternative energy, I mean, it's great, but I think people have massively overestimated how quickly we as a world can transition. I think that's piece number one. In terms of the future trend, let me think about this. I'll probably make a video or an article about this because I feel like I want to give you a better answer because there's so many aspects of energy, right? There's utilities, there are pipelines, then there's the producers, right? There's coal companies, the natural gas and oil, and then there's the alternative energy is probably what most people think about with the future. But I would say this. So let me think more. I think nuclear energy has to make a bigger comeback than it has. It's the only real thing that makes sense for most of the world. Okay, I think Germany was stupid to abandon nuclear energy. I think coal is dirty. The consequences of coal are just too severe for the environment. Wind, solar, geothermal are great. I love that their cost has come down, but they're intermittent, and the wind doesn't blow all the time. The sun doesn't shine all the time. And so they're not like stable enough to power the grid. And we haven't figured out battery storage. We haven't figured out energy storage yet. And we've been trying for 100 years. Okay. So nuclear energy is probably the only realistic solution right now. I mean, yes, there's problems with it, but I think if anything, we'll see more and more nuclear. I mean, So let me give you that short answer for now.
目前来说呢，我们认为大家整个市场或者全世界的人们可能比较就高估了这个世界从传统能源转变到新能源的这个速度。我们将来James 可能会去做一些关于这个方面的视频或者文章，大家可以关注一下。那总结一下呢，就是其实他认为目前来说，核能源是最合理的 怎么一个选择，因为如果说其他选择的话，像风能啊、太阳能都不是特别的稳定并且我们研究了大概100年这个能源存储，但是我们都没有研究出来，所以世界转变的速度其实没有那么的快。所以一句话总结呢，就是可能最合理的这个新能源还是核能，虽然说它有自己的问题，但是这是所有选择里面最合理的一个选择。
Okay, so another question from the chat, and thank you guys again for these questions. What's the reason the Hims and Hers stock fell so much in 2021? To my what happened here? We cut off the recording. Something happened. Okay, maybe I'm just on different camera now. My maybe overheated. To my recollection, it just. It wasn't so much that it had some bad earnings or disappointing earnings guidance, but I would say it wasn't so much that it was really bad. I think the stock shouldn't have been so expensive in the first place. It was really overpriced in 2021, and because a lot of things were overpriced in 2021. And so when some disappointing earnings happened, that's all it took to really hurt the stock price.
下一个问题是关于 Hims and Hers 为什么在2021年就是股价下跌那么多？那其实就是主要原因就是因为它被高估了。就是这个股价就是过于的贵了。那当然在2015年的时候很多股票都有这样的泡沫，然后当你一个这个不太尽如人意的这么一个财报出来的时候，那当然就会下跌啦。
Cool. So I think that's all we've got. My camera went out, so I'm back I'm on my laptop. I don't know why, but guys, thank you so much. I believe we have a survey at the end. You can scan this and fill it out if you want. We appreciate everyone coming in, and we appreciate the questions so much. If you don't have an account, please download the app, set one up. It's very easy, and we got Q&A, people to help you with your questions, customer service, whatever you need, we got it. Thank you again, guys, and we'll see you guys in the next webinar.
非常感谢大家参与我们今天的 webinar 也非常感谢大家的问题，然后欢迎大家去掃这个二维码去这个填一下我们的用户满意度调查问卷，然后下次见，我们下次 webinar 见。
All right, bye guys.
大家快点开户啊，开户。
And thank you again, Xiaoping.
Sure.